So the Legacies of Biafra project is a project that's commemorating and reflecting on the 50th anniversary of the Nigeria-Biafra War. So in Nigeria, there was a civil war in the 1960s. There hasn't been so much engagement, not the level of engagement you'd expect for a conflict that has serious ramifications. I began this project back when I was a PhD student, and it sort of began as just out of the need to remember. There was sort of no funding for it. It's been brilliant in supporting the work I've done. It got me thinking about, well, why do we remember some conflicts or some aspects of history and others we forget? And given that there are many people who lived through the war and haven't had a space to really express their experiences, it was really important to me to be able to do that. So I organised with a colleague a conference on Biafra at 50. This was in 2017, and it had such a massive impact on people. It really was an interesting space we created. It wasn't the same as a sort of regular academic conference. It was almost a space of healing. People really found a kind of community in which they could speak about this. And so it made me also want to have this conversation in as many different settings as possible. And we had an exhibition called Legacies of Biafra at SOAS. It was really a space where you could go and learn and share. And one thing that was particularly moving for me was seeing some of the feedback. And you had situations where you had people who had experienced the war themselves. And so having this sort of space in which the war is present, but it's not your own experience that's being presented, it's not about you, often facilitated conversations. You had parents who had experienced the war who hadn't really spoken to their children about it. And by entering a space where you can see a picture that might remind you of your own experience, but isn't centering your experience, gave them the space to begin to open up that conversation. So the latest dimension to this project I'm working on is a documentary film. I'm working with a scholar and filmmaker, Nathan Richards. We've been interviewing a series of writers and scholars and thinking about the role that writers play in opening up this conversation. So in January marks the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. So we'll be having hopefully a nice big launch and sort of taking that on tour, going to festivals, having screenings in communities across the UK and internationally.